Hello and welcome to Live on KEXP at Home. I'm Cheryl Waters and I am so happy to be joined today by Cassandra Jenkins. Hi, how are you doing, Cassandra?
Hi, I'm great. It's so good to see you. It's really good to be here.
It's wonderful to have you here, and you look very calm and serene for someone who just got caught in a massive rainstorm in New York. We were talking off camera about how dramatic those can be sometime, but really exhilarating.
Yeah, it's kind of cleansing. I feel like it just feels like New York is it can also be really, there's something really calming about it as well.
Well, you grew up in New York. I know that you grew up in a musical family surrounded by music since a very young age. And I can't even imagine an upbringing filled with so much art and music. Can you tell me a little bit about what your childhood was like? It sounds like your family home was a hub for musicians.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, I think this time has been so strange actually for that reason, is because on an average day, there's just another person coming in with their instrument in their suitcase, and like a new person sitting at the breakfast table having coffee. And I'm just used to that rotating cast of characters, and I really love that. I mean, it's I don't really know what to compare it to. I think a lot of friends will come by and suggest anything from the Royal Tannenbaums to the Von Trapp family to, just a college, conservatory setting where you can hear people playing music in kind of like every room of the house, and it's completely different and kind of cacophonous, but in a really great way. I remember at one point we had a professional opera singer, a banjo player, a violinist, and a bassist all living like in 4 apartments kind of like right next to one another. And at the time I was teaching music lessons a lot, and I just remember it actually feeling like really vibrant and really alive in that way. But we've hosted house concerts for the past almost 20 years here at the house on the 4th floor, bringing people from all over the world into our home to perform, usually about an hour and a half to 2 hours of music with a break in between. And we used to do those. It was supposed to be monthly, but we ended up doing them almost twice a month, almost every month in the past few years, because there was just so many people that were asking us to come play, and it's hard to say no when you love so much music. But big parties every 2 weeks or every month or so.
How often do you play at those?
At the house concerts, it's really fun. It's usually the day of. Someone in the family will come forward and say like, "Oh, I feel like playing a new song that I wrote this week," or "I'm working on this thing. I'd really like to try it out." Or one of us will be requested to play a song by by someone or our parents. And it's never determined beforehand, which I really like. It's always sort of a spur of the moment thing. And it's it's just a wonderful setting to try new music and to play music in general. I think it's one of my favorite ways to experience music is in a really intimate setting. And so, yeah, I'll usually maybe like every 3 concerts, I'll come forward and play a song. Our very last house concert was on, I think, March 8th of 2020. And I played one of the songs off of my record that just came out, and it was one of the only times I've ever played that song live in front of an audience. So yeah, just like really interesting way to present material, I think, and try it out in a new way, basically.
Well, I've been really enjoying your new record, An Overview on Phenomenal Nature. It came out on Bada Bing in February, and amazing that you haven't really played it for a live audience yet.
Yeah.
Through your songwriting, you strike me as a very observational person, and you speak about encounters in your life. How do you keep track of those and make it so that you can remember those, and how do they make their way into your music?
That's a really wonderful question. I think this record that we're talking about is a really unique example of a very windowed period of time where I wasn't trying to keep track, but I go through these phases where I'm sort of obsessively recording everything and in a state of observation that I can't help but really see a lot of potency in the things around me. And they just end up in all different corners of my input. And that'll be in, a lot of the times it's in the notes app in my phone. Sometimes it's in a tiny little notebook, voice memos, emails, text messages. It's kind of a web of places. And when I made my record, it was really pulling from all of those places in a pretty disorganized fashion. I mean, it's, I think especially when I'm in that kind of state of feeling really exhilarated by observing everything around me, like I was in that moment, it's pretty chaotic. And putting it all in one place is a way of making order out of that chaos, which I don't think I normally take the time to do. It was just, I had this moment in time where I decided I'm going to make something, and I had these observations, and what came out of it was a record. I think if I often think that if my assignment at that time or my job at that time was like, if I was given a sculpture show at a gallery, those would have become sculptures somehow. But the way that everything worked at that moment in my life, like I ended up with a record, and I'm really happy that I did. I think it would be completely different if that was a different moment in my life too. It's ever changing. So I'm thankful for the opportunity to put it all in one place, you know.
Well, let's share a couple of those sculptures with our listeners now. It's Cassandra Jenkins, songs from the album An Overview on Phenomenal Nature, live on KEXP at home.
Hello, KEXP. I'm Cassandra Jenkins, and we are filming from Catskill, New York. We have a fire going. It's a beautiful rainy Sunday. This is Doug Wieselman and Adam Brisbin. I'm Cassandra. This is Michelangelo. 1, 2. I'm a three-legged dog, working with what I got, and part of me will always be looking for what I lost. There's a fly around my head, waiting for the day I drop dead. My DNA looks pretty strange. Can you see it? See it on my breath. You're a virus, and you come back at the first sign of weakness. Treatable, not curable, and I'm building up a resistance. I've been living since I was young, far too young to know the role I was given. I'm Michelangelo, I carve myself out of marble when I don't know how to grow flowers out of arrows. I'm a three-legged dog looking for what I lost. All I want is to fall apart in the arms of someone entirely strange to me. In your eyes I see the panoply, all the people inside me. What is it you're looking for in the looking glass? It's in the crosshairs of a stranger's stare. I'm lost at last. All I want is to fall apart in the arms of someone entirely strange to me. In your eyes I see the panoply, all the people inside me. Empty space is my escape. It runs through me like a river, while time spits in my face, turns us like stones into drifters. All I want is to fall apart in the arms of someone entirely strange to me. In your eyes I see the panoply, all the people inside me. To fall apart in the arms of someone entirely strange to me. In your eyes I see the panoply, all the people inside me. All I want is to fall apart in the arms
We're live on KEXP at Home with Cassandra Jenkins. You just heard Michelangelo and Crosshairs from the new album, An Overview on Phenomenal Nature. Cassandra, you write so beautifully about David Berman on this record, and I know that you were going on tour with him as part of his Purple Mountains band, and you spent only a handful of days rehearsing with him before his passing, and I can't even imagine how heartbreaking that must have been. And when Purple Mountains tour was canceled, you instead went and spent some time in Norway, and that also clearly had an impact on you, the water, nature showing up in your lyrics. Can you describe your days on that trip?
Oh, yeah. In Norway?
Yeah.
I actually, similarly, I went back, it was, a lot of it was very improvised, that trip. But I had a few plans in place, but, I was buying train tickets the morning of, kind of thing. And I went back and I looked at my calendar and my notes and my emails and my photographs, and I actually wrote down everything that I did during that time. And it's hard to believe how much took place in any given day. And I think that happens when you're traveling. But I remember arriving in Oslo and taking a very long bus to get to a pretty far southern point of Norway, where my friend then picked me up in his car, and then we took that to his motorboat, and then we got to the island. So it was a lot of multiple forms of transportation: ferries, trains, convertibles, really old sailboats and tiny motorboats alike. I was on all of them. And luckily it's sort of like late summer, early fall. So the weather was strikingly beautiful and still quite warm and very, pretty long days, a lot of sunlight. And it was filled with a lot of wonder, a lot of really kind people coming into my life, some of whom knew what I was experiencing or kind of in the wake of experiencing, and some of whom had no idea, but just were very welcoming to me, cooking a lot of big meals with old friends and new friends, a lot of walking on this island called Linger, which is where two of my friends live and where they housed me for about a week, where there are no cars and lots of places to go jumping into the ocean. So I would wake up every morning really late. I would stay up really late at night because I was very jet lagged, and sleep in later than everyone else. And wake up and have whatever leftover coffee was on the counter, and then jump in the ocean like first thing in the morning, in the cold Atlantic, and spend time with my friends during the day, letting them kind of go about their business. They have a sail loft where they have a little cafe there that they run. They keep bees. They run several gardens on the island. So they're very wonderfully busy people and really incredible hosts. And then after they went to bed, usually after like a candlelit dinner, I would stay up and write. And I wrote a lot. I wrote in my journal. I wrote long emails to people. There was a lot of correspondence at that time because I was feeling very suddenly detached from this band that I bonded with, and really missing that connection and feeling like, what am I doing on an island? Like I'm supposed to be in Philadelphia right now, like playing a rock show. Like I was so confused about kind of my place and my time. And I spent a lot of time just writing again. Yeah. So my days were, and then I ended up going to a wedding at the end of the trip as well. So it was strange just to have like a very sudden and tragic death in my life, and then at the same time be celebrating a marriage of two very dear friends of mine simultaneously. It was just a lot. It was a lot happening, and kind of a lot of swirling travel days, and it was an adventure.
What do you remember about those days, although there were far too few, playing with the band and that you take with you?
Um, it's amazing. I haven't really talked about this very much. I have a tendency to get a little bit emotional, but I have to say that learning that material was an incredible honor. I spent a lot of time like cramming a lot of the Purple Mountains record, and then also a lot of Silver Jews songs. And then when I finally got to sit down and play it with the band, first of all, I was feeling like pretty unsure of myself, thinking like, okay, I can play these chords on the guitar. Like I have an acoustic guitar that works, but there's a million people who are qualified to do this job. Like, why am I sitting here? And then as soon as I got into the room with everyone and with David, I felt so immediately at home and so like I was in the perfect place. Like I felt genuinely really happy. And genuinely like I was playing in the best band I'd ever played in. I remember crying several times during rehearsal, kind of like silently, like not wanting anybody to see, just because I just felt so, I felt so genuinely lucky to be there and to be in the presence of this great band, who were supporting a really phenomenal artist, who was so warm and so funny and so, really struggling at that moment in a lot of ways, but in the most, I don't know, kind and warm and genuine way. It was pretty incredible. I mean, he told a lot of stories, and he showed up one day with an ice cream cake for no reason that we all shared. And the music was really incredible, and I got to see David genuinely excited about playing shows. A very fond memory that I have was of him sort of miming, like high-fiving a front row of a crowd of people. And it was one of those just like funny gestural moments it was just sort of like physical comedy of being in this tiny rehearsal space, like crammed in with everybody and kind of like miming a big crowd. But it also, I think, felt like seeing someone who hadn't toured in a really long time, like accepting that, which of course in hindsight is a difficult thing to wrap my head around. But it was really beautiful. And like, I just have a lot of very fond memories of that short time. And of course I think that answers your question. I might have derailed a little bit.
No, and I appreciate you. Thank you for talking about that. It sounds like an incredible experience. And
yeah,
I imagine you have so much gratitude for that time
I do.
to share.
Yeah.
I know that you had written some songs before you went into the studio for this record that you scrapped. And I read that after the cancellation of the Purple Mountains tour that you couldn't play your old songs anymore at that time. And I'm wondering what about them made them, or what about you at that time made them unfit for that moment in time?
Yeah. Yeah. It was to go through such an extreme experience and to also feel like, oh my gosh, I'm playing in the best band I've ever played in. And then to suddenly kind of about face and realize like I felt my whole being like ready to put myself into that situation of doing that tour. And then really felt, both mournful for obvious reasons, but then also like really unsure of why I was getting on stage at that point at all. I sold a lot of my gear right after that tour was canceled. I definitely went through somewhat of a crisis. I mean, it was a peaceful crisis. It was, but it was I really didn't know. I got on stage and was like, I don't know what I'm doing here. This feels ridiculous. And I don't feel in touch with anything that I'm doing. I feel very removed from my life before. I think probably in the way that like a lot of us feel about like pre-COVID stuff. I think you have these before and after moments in your life, and it can really delineate my emotional relationship to certain material or certain clothes, just a whole kind of swath of aspects of life. But I got on stage and realized that I was phoning it in. And when I feel that, something has to change. And when I feel that, I can't ignore it and just put on a show, because I feel my whole self kind of like just unable to it feels like I'm just playing a trick on everybody or something by trying to play something that I don't feel any attachment to. So that wasn't working. I did have one pretty epic show where I was opening for a friend, and like definitely all of the things that I'm describing to you like unfolded on stage. And it was probably the worst, but maybe most interesting show I've ever played. And
what happened?
I was improvising. I told some kind of pseudo jokes on stage. It like almost took on like a stand-up comedy vibe at one point, which is not my specialty. And at one point I decided to lead the audience in a conga line around the room. And everyone followed. It's when you have a microphone, there's a lot of power in that. People will often kind of do what you say. If you say, we're going to do a conga line now, and it's your set, like people will usually be down. And that was actually pretty freeing and kind of fun to be like, all right, that's, I'm in charge and that's what we're doing. And, a friend of mine, my friend Lola, came up to me, and she ended up right behind me in the conga line. She had her hands on my shoulder and she was like, what are you doing right now? I was like, I'm definitely going through a crisis, like as we speak, Lola. But it'll be over in like 5 minutes. Yeah. No, I mean, it was totally absurd. I mean, it was just one of those moments that I look back on it really fondly, but even at the time I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. This is crazy. And nobody should be paying me for this, but they are. So I'm just going to have fun with it. And I had a tour coming up very shortly after, and I realized like I couldn't conga my way through a tour around the country. So that is when I was like, okay, time to pull together some new songs so that I don't put myself and an audience through this every night.
I love it. Well, you did pull together some new songs, and you and Josh Kaufman, who we know here and love with his work with Muzz and Bonnie Light Horseman and Craig Finn and Taylor Swift. Yeah. You went into the studio, and it sounds like the record came together in about a week, which, were you surprised how quickly it all came?
Yeah, I was. I mean, I was also, there was a lot going on in my life at that point. So the other remarkable thing is we weren't like pushing it in the studio. We weren't there 8 a.m. until midnight. Like Josh is a father and like a very family oriented person. And we would clock out at 6 p.m. every night. And I went to a poetry reading that week. I performed a David Berman tribute one night. Like I was doing a lot outside of the studio too. But all of that was feeding into the music. Like one of the poetry reading that I went to, one of the lyrics was inspired by that poetry reading, and it just made it into the song the next day. And, I think also thinking about David and doing that tribute, I think it brought up a lot of emotions, but I had a place to channel it too, which was, I was really grateful for. I am surprised that it came together that quickly, but I think when you have good working chemistry with someone, and not just anyone, but Josh Kaufman, who's just an incredible collaborator and just an incredibly sensitive, intuitive, funny, caring, like brilliant person. Like it we went from having pages of paper with words on them to having songs in that short period. And when time was up, it was Friday, it was time to go home. Like, we had the songs that we had made, and that was the record for all but one song, which I ended up recording in 2020 to sort of bring the album into the new world that we are living in now. So yeah, it was surprising, but also I love that feeling of creating things quickly, and when you can get into a momentum like that, some really special things can happen, and there's kind of no turning back. Whereas I think I have made a lot of things that are very labored over, and that's its own kind of precious stone. But there's something really amazing about doing something really quickly and just being like, well, I'm not going to doubt it. I'm just going to make it and think about what it is later. I'm going to just worry about creating it right now. And that's one way to approach making. And I'm excited that I was able to make something that way this time. I think next time we'll see, it'll probably be something really different.
Well, let's listen to a couple more songs now. The album, An Overview on Phenomenal Nature. I'm talking with Cassandra Jenkins, and this song is called New Bikini.
New Bikini.
He makes a living as a fisherman, drives in from Long Island. His mama always told him, baby, go get in the ocean. If you're bruised, you're scraped, you're any kind of broken. The water, it cures everything. After David passed away, my friends put me up for a few days off the coast of Norway, and every morning they'd say, baby, go jump in the ocean. It's cold enough to get your blood moving. Yeah, the water, it cures everything. Okay, I said nothing to do about DNA, and she worried at me and went out and bought me a new bikini and said, baby, Yeah, the water, it cures everything. Doctors shell out medicine, and there might be something in the mind-body connection. So I told him, baby, let's get you to the ocean. Everybody's saying it cures everything. Yeah, the water, it cures everything. A security guard stopped me to offer an overview on phenomenal nature. She said sculpture is not just formed from penetration. You see, men have lost touch with the feminine. And with her pink lipstick and her queen's accent, she went on for a while about our president. The bookkeeper at the end of the 7th ray to tell me what he knew about Saint Germain, and he told me about chakras and karma and the purple flame, about the birth of the cosmos, the ascended masters, and the astral plane. He said, you know, the mind is just a hard drive in the this life. The mind is just a hard drive. Daryl's been teaching me how to drive. I finally got my license when I was 35. Speeding up the west side, changing lanes. He reminds me to leave room for grace. He said, have you been seeing your therapist? You seem a little on edge. Are you always this nervous? I said, yeah. And this is a hard drive. Yeah. This is just a hard drive. Her gemstone eyes caught my gaze. She said, ooh, dear, I can see you've had a rough few months. But this year, it's gonna be a good one. I'm gonna count to 3 and tap your shoulder. We're gonna put your heart back together. So all those little pieces they took from you, they're coming back now. They'll miss him too. So close your eyes, count to 3, take a deep breath, count with me.
That is Cassandra Jenkins live on KEXP at home. And Cassandra, you have so many unique characters who appear on an overview of phenomenal nature. You've got a security guard, a psychic, your friend Haley, who you've written a song about. And you've talked in interviews about how you have frequent encounters with strangers. What do you think it is about you that is drawn to strangers and them to you?
I think it changes on a given day. I think that that's also a really great question. I think being a New Yorker, I feel like I'm really born of this place. And there's a certain sort of clip to conversation with strangers here. And I think people, you really are part of the hive mind when you're living here for as long as I have. And you get used to a certain type of interaction that sometimes my favorite interactions are the silent ones where you can kind of have a conversation and be like, it could be as simple as, I love your outfit, but you don't have to actually exchange a single word, but they just know, and and you'll never see each other again. And that's like beautiful to me. I love those kind of interactions. And then I love the ones too, where you might be caught in the rain and stuck under a bodega awning, and you'll have a beautiful 15-minute conversation with a stranger that, again, you may never see again. Or sometimes you meet someone in a car and you end up becoming friends, But I think actually the marriage that I attended in Norway, those two friends of mine met on the train. They were both reading the same book.
Oh, wow.
And, sparks flew. It's like there's a New Yorker magazine cover of exactly that. And they basically are the living incarnation of that. But, I think there's a lot of magic that can happen. And I think it's really about, I don't want to get too esoteric, but, about the energy that you carry yourself with. And you can open and close that energy. Can you hear the thunder?
I can.
It's very dramatic.
I love thunder.
I know, me too. It's quite close. The thunder and lightning was pretty close. But yeah, I think there's people are down to riff here. And a lot of the people I was referencing in my record are in New York. There are a lot of characters in Los Angeles and California as well. And of course some Norwegian characters too. But I think, especially when you're traveling, I think our energy opens up a little bit. Our inhibitions are down. And you can kind of catch people in the same state if you're both there. It's sort of a difficult thing to describe, but I'm really obsessed with this one book. It's called Psychogeography, and I got it at Treadwell's Books in London a few years ago. But it kind of talks about wayfinding in this way of an urban landscape where walking becomes a surreal sort of exploration. And it in and of itself is sort of an artistic practice. And I don't go out on a walk in the morning and then think like I'm about to make art, but I do feel like it is a vital aspect to living and creating and just existing in the world is to walk and to have the freedom to walk and explore and not have a destination in mind. And I think with that sort of energy about a walk, you do tend to collect like people's attention if they're in that same mind frame.
I get the impression that in addition to walking among people in cities, that you really enjoy immersing yourself in nature. And it sounds like it's something that brings you a lot of joy, which is something I can really relate to myself. Can you talk a little bit about your relationship with nature? It certainly feels like it's infused throughout this record.
Yeah. I mean, to kind of what I was saying, I think people are maybe some of the most like sensitive antennas in that way. But I think I'm also practicing that same sort of way of being when I'm walking in a forest, is just trying to open up my senses and my antennas and become a listener, become an observer, I really also, as much as I love the idea of wayfinding and walking, I also love deep listening and the idea that listening is a practice, and it's one that deeply informs us. And there's a lot of wisdom to be gained simply from standing in a forest and listening to the sounds around you. And that wisdom isn't necessarily something that you can read in a book. You know, it's the stuff that's hitting the nervous system in different ways. And I, this year especially, wow, it was kind of my main form of solace when I was very isolated from other people. I mean, I went for weeks on end without seeing another human at points this year, but spent a lot of time walking in the snow in the forest in upstate New York. And that was kind of endlessly interesting and healing to me once I was bundled and ready to go. I think I find a lot of connections between my experiences in my internal landscape, whatever's going on there, and what is external. And I think that they feed off of each other. I also find I'm a bird watcher, and I find that the more I immerse myself in practices of that kind of observation or listening, the more I dream about it at night, and it sort of informs that side of my psyche, and they really kind of feed off of each other in this really vital way. And I think if I'm not practicing that enough, I start to feel my soul kind of sinking. So it's really, really important to me to get a dose of that. And when I'm in New York City, I go to Central Park every single day, at least for 5 minutes, but I need to just kind of like touch base.
Well, I think that is a good time for us then to hear the last song that you prepared for us. It's called Ramble, and you can hear the bird calls and sounds of footsteps on the album's beautiful meditative song, which concludes the album. Let's listen to it now. Cassandra Jenkins live on KEXP at home.
Thank you so much for listening. I'm Cassandra Jenkins. We're here with KEXP. This is Doug Wieselman on piano, bass, clarinet, and saxophone. And out in Brisbin on the guitar. And last but not least, this is Wyndham Garnett filming. And, and thank you again.
That is Cassandra Jenkins live on KEXP at home. That gorgeous song, Ramble, concludes the new album, An Overview on Phenomenal Nature. Cassandra, it sounds like you spend a lot of time specifically in the Ramble. You say you go to Central Park every day when you're in New York. Can you describe to someone who may not know what the Ramble is or have visited it there, what you love about it, and actually just describe it physically?
Yeah. Well, Central Park is pretty big. It spans a large portion of Manhattan, which is an island, and it is quite. It's beautifully constructed and quite manicured. But there's one section of it that is. It seems like it's designed to be more wild, and it feels designed to allow you to get lost. And to be able to be in New York City in a place that is on a grid and to still get lost. I got lost there yesterday. I go to this place every day and I still get turned around. And to have the opportunity to be able to get lost in a city is, especially if you don't have a destination in mind, I think is a wonderful gift to have that Olmsted gave us, the architect. And so for me, that is the wonderful thing about the Ramble is I can truly get lost there, and therefore have more access to my senses and to the things around me. I think it's like we can get lost in a lot of ways. We can turn to some people turn to substances, for example, to kind of get that feeling, or travel. But on a very accessible level, like there is just getting physically lost is like a great way to kind of get turned on your head a little bit. And so, yeah, the Ramble is just a winding, hilly, there are sections of it that for geriatric millennials like myself, it feels a little bit like the computer game Myst. And you just feel like you turn a corner and there's just a new portal to a different kind of, can feel a little fairyish sometimes in there. But it's also interesting because the Ramble, it's a great bird watching spot. Also, a lot of bird watchers are there. You see a lot of binoculars. But it has multiple lives. I mean, it has a nightlife too, which is, it's, I think, that's a part of the Ramble that I don't know very much about. But the part that I experience is when I wake up really early in the morning, like I did during a lot of early 2020, it was almost empty, and I would go and just, it seemed like nature was sort of taking over in this new way. And yeah, it's kind of overgrown. It's a place where I find a lot of solace, and I find a lot of, it's a bit of a sanctuary for me. So in writing a song about the Ramble, or at least kind of, I really wrote a song designed for walking, which initially I was actually, there's an artist named Janet Cardiff who I really admire a lot. And she writes these audio guides, and I've always wanted to make one. And my initial idea for the Ramble was I actually created an audio guide for it. The music was just accompanying my audio guide. And when I went back and listened to it, I realized that having a guide was more than I wanted to give to people. It was actually maybe taking away from an experience that could otherwise be a walk pretty much anywhere. And so I ended up stripping out my vocals and stripping out my guitar and just leaving, like kind of dissolving my own place in it to leave only the imprint of my guidance and the musicians that are there. Sort of, I also thought of it as a way of sort of culminating a lot of the rest of the album and the players on the album and the sounds of the album, and letting them sort of swirl alongside where I was in that moment, which was walking through the Ramble in like April, May, June of 2020 when I made that song. And so, that idea of kind of having echoes of this experience and this record in my head while on these walks, and then offering that then to whoever is experiencing the record wherever they are, and getting to walk through the Ramble in their own way.
Well, it's a beautiful way to end the record, and I appreciate you so much sharing the new record with us, creating the songs for KEXP to enjoy. It's been such a pleasure to talk with you today.
You too. Thank you so much for having me.
Again, the new record, An Overview on Phenomenal Nature. It's Cassandra Jenkins live on KEXP at home. Thanks to all of our listeners for supporting KEXP and for making these beautiful sessions possible.
Discover new music at listener-powered KEXP.org.